Hey guys, welcome to another live show, another live She Knows Arsenal match reaction for Crystal Palace 1, Arsenal 5, or however you want to say it, Arsenal 5, Crystal Palace 1. Very interesting game where I feel like we're going to have a lot of things to talk about because it was just like that game was very much so like I I could not have like thought of that before. Like I could not have predicted that we would win 5-1. We would Jesus would have scored 2 goals, and then when he should be getting the hat trick, missed the main chance, and Rice comes off of the bench and scores a really nice goal when Yeri plays in the 9 position. Just all type of stuff. Crystal Palace have quite a few chances. I think we can all be a little bit honest there that 5-1 might flatter us just a little bit just because of some of the chances that they got. And we were like drunk for the first half and then some of the second half. So we really didn't calm things down until around like the fourth goal, like I guess, So yeah, loads of things to talk about. I have the poll going for man of the match if you guys want to go ahead and vote. It was an interesting one because um I couldn't really find that many like outstanding performances. Everybody else besides like Jesus, obviously, because he scored the 2 goals and was like really dangerous, and MLS. Then there was like a drop, and then I had to like fill them in with other people. Um, so yeah, because I know like Martinelli scored, but it was like, you know what I mean? Like Kai scored, but so I just threw some other people in there. I'm pretty sure Jesus will be man of the match, but you guys can go ahead and vote on that. Um, but yeah, a lovely Saturday. Made sure that we did not go into next week as the banter club because when Nottingham Forest beat Brentford away from home, which Brentford haven't lost any games at home or some nonsense like that, literally play like like Bayern at home, only to lose to Nottingham Forest today, so Nottingham Forest could leap above us before we started our game. Also, Aston Villa beat Manchester City, which is like kind of good because Manchester City stay low, but then Aston Villa are closing the gap on us. Newcastle are also slowly closing the gap, and so we need to get going. And so we haven't won a Premier League game since Man United, so because we dropped points in our last 2 games. So this was a much needed game. Was it pretty? No. Was it, our best football ever? There's still things that need to be worked out. Absolutely. But I would say that this is a very clinical away day. And we've had games like this in the past where we weren't particularly super controlled. We weren't, we were sloppy. We gave up chances, but because we finished our chances, it gave us like a little bit of leg room or a little bit of like a gap between us and them. And, we just kind of walked away with the 3 points. Sometimes you just need to score more goals than the other team and just get out of there, right? And we've been pretty bad away from home this season, if we're honest. So I'll take whatever I can get. I was willing to take a 1-0 before and I got a 5-1. So I'm a happy girl. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And letting me know how you guys feel about the performance. I feel like, because I'm online and then I'm also in the group chat. And I feel like the overall feeling in the first half was we're drunk. Raya's making mistakes, Saliba's making mistakes. The midfield is not quite where it needs to be, but we are winning the first half 3-1. So it'd be really interesting to see what you guys feel like the performance was like, and that kind of stuff, and where it could be like, tweaked or improved or whatever. And what outstanding performances did you see? Because I'm going to tell you guys right now that I think MLS was pretty like obviously one of our top performers, and there was there was kind of like a gap between him and Jesus and kind of everyone else. I really think MLS looked like a seasoned professional in that game. He didn't really have, except for the foul throw, which all of our players have that disease. Whenever somebody is taking a throw in, they freeze up, take forever, and then we've seen even like Timber get a foul throw. We know that that's kind of who we are. But beyond that, I really do think like in terms of outside of goal scores, MLS he was outstanding today. And I said like, he didn't have the best game against Everton or, whatever it was. but that was, I feel like, mostly because the whole team was playing like shit, and even within that, his game within a bad game was really good. I'm loving this because at this point in time where we see that we have players that are going to be in and out, like I always say, throughout the entire season, we're going to have injuries. Obviously, we have the big one from today, which is Saka, that they're going to need to be players that step up and step into these positions that maybe we didn't quite think about before. And MLS is becoming one of those because the left back position is very much so a merry-go-round of nonsense. Whether it's the player is not, good enough to play that position, or they're just constantly injured. We have a just rotating group of players, and it's like whoever's fit on the day. But I like the look of Timber and MLS. I do. I like the look of Timber and MLS. I think they're both very technical. They can carry the ball. They're press resistant. But MLS has just a little bit more of that refinement on his pass that Timber doesn't have. And that doesn't mean Timber is not good, but that's just like the difference between the two. And we know that our left back is usually more of a passer anyway. He was outstanding today. I really just like, he is, obviously we talked a lot about Ethan at the beginning of the season, and he deserved all of those plaudits, but my goodness, is MLS a player. That guy is so wise beyond his years. He looks like a player that's played for so long, and where I felt like quite a few of our players were getting, for lack of a better word, bullied in their duels, with Sar or Mateta or Kamada or Mitchell or whoever, whatever one of those players, like they were kind of winning all of those duels. I felt like MLS was one of the only ones that wasn't getting knocked off the ball, that was holding his own. And so well done him. He really impressed me today a lot. And so I can't wait to rewatch and focus on him a little bit more, because like he's no longer a player that we can just like, oh, well, he's young, so don't. His first like start, outside of like a Carabao Cup game, was a Champions League fixture, and he was one of the standouts there. Away from home against a physical Crystal Palace, he was one of our best performers. He is very much so in this squad and starting games. And Calafiori was good when he came on, once he kind of settled, because he was like a little too aggressive when he first came in. I don't think, the very next game I'm picking Calafiori. I think I'm maintaining this MLS vibe because I like it. I like it. I like what he's bringing to the team. I really do. And, once, Jesus is somebody that is probably going to get a lot of talk today, and he should, because he scored 5 goals in like, 2 games. One of them was like half a game, and he could have scored more. And it wasn't just that, like his overall gameplay has went up levels, and confidence is key. And that's why you have to play the hot hand when you have it. I'm so happy that Arteta didn't go to his like, well, I started you midweek, so now I'm just going to go back to the lineup that I would have done. He found a way to get Jesus into that lineup. And I know he wanted to make sure he had Havertz in there as well. But I think Jesus repaid Arteta's faith. And with Saka getting the injury, you need to find somebody else that is going to lead this attacking line, as like our best attacker. And Jesus instantly became our second best attacker, or our first best attacker, like once Saka went off. And so, yeah, I think Jesus deserves a lot of credit for repaying the faith that Arteta gave him from the midweek game, because I don't think it was, I think a lot of us in the back of our mind was like, but what if he kind of falls off again? And, I don't know how long this is going to last. This could be to the end of the season. This could be a purple patch. This could be done tomorrow. But just him maintaining that level and looking even more confident from the start today, really should have had a hat trick. We need that. We needed somebody to come in with some sort of form. So, yeah, I'm so happy with his performance. And, also Martinelli on the right-hand side, I thought for the most part looked the part. He had that really good cross, I think, from that side that ended up being a goal from somebody on the backside. He had some decent moments. He had some rickety moments, but I think it's like now you're trying to get your angles right on the other side. And so if Saka ends up being out for a period of time, Martinelli moving to that side may not be that bad of a thing, because it also makes his decision-making a lot easier, because you're already on your right foot. When you're on your wrong foot, you have to think, I feel like, a little bit more about what you're going to do, because naturally you want to cut it in on your right. But if he's naturally already on his right, he can just go to the end line and just do his thing, right? And so I thought, Martinelli got a goal. He switched over to the other side. He looked bright. He defended well on that side. And so, he might have to be somebody that deputizes for Saka on that side. And I felt like that was a positive performance for him. Um, I thought the midfield struggled. I'm not going to lie. I don't, you know, I just felt like it was very open, and we conceded a lot of opportunities that Crystal Palace are a better team. They probably put some of those away. They did punish us with the Sar chance, and Sar actually looks like a very good player. We were saying it in our group chat that he's somebody that, we were talking about Semenyo the other day. I'm like, actually, Sar looks like quality too, like a dangerous, direct, fast, strong winger. He really looked the part today, and he gave us nightmares. He gave us the blues, and he scored that goal. And it was a really, really nice goal. And it was just such like a weak moment from that side where nobody really closed him down, and he was just wide open. Lerma and these guys were making runs from the midfield and nobody was picking them up. There's just a lot of space in there. And so that was probably like the one thing that was really like freaking people out. Also with Saliba drunk, Raya having drunk moments. Like, it wasn't the best game for them. But what have we been asking for? Our back line has been pretty much our saving grace this entire season, and a lot of last season as well, where they kept clean sheets, they scored goals, they kept us in games. And so it was about time that the attack, carried the defense for a game. We know that they'll go back to their norm. I don't know what was happening today. I just think Crystal Palace, that small stadium, everybody was on top of them, and those really aggressive physical players were getting on top of them, and their game plan was to play out of the back, and so they had to kind of rejig a little bit. And they got a little bit rattled. So we know, like, they'll go back to normal. We know that they'll go back to their, like, consistent selves. But I think you could just chalk this off as like a bad day for the defense that didn't end up costing us because our attack was clinical. And so sometimes you just need your attack to save your defense. And I was talking to Colleen, on Twitter about this, because she was saying that, we didn't look very good and there's a lot of space in midfield and our defenders were like drunk and not playing well. And I'm like, honestly, our rivals have these games a lot. I see Liverpool have these games at times. We've seen City have these types of games at times. Chelsea's had these games where the opposition has chances and they don't put it away, but our rivals are just more clinical and they get that little bit of, that rub of the green. And so I wouldn't think too much into it. I think that, in a day where you score 5 open play goals or 4 open play goals or whatever it is, I have to go back and look because we scored so many goals today, that it was just a day where our attack needed to be saved, or our attack needed to save the defense, for once. So yeah, those are kind of like my initial thoughts on the game. And so I'll go ahead and go through some of your comments and all that kind of stuff, and then we'll go ahead and get into player ratings. Chosen One says, MLS is such an intelligent player, such a good decision making. Him and Ethan have that in common. What a gem, man. Red Skull says we need Saka. Mata says Yassar has looked promising for years now. Boy says no, not a sad day for the defense. Palace had a good plan to put our back line under pressure. Kwame says Saka is so unfortunate he had to go off, but we were on fire. And I got nervous instantly. You guys let me know in the chat if you guys got nervous as well, that once Saka went off, what we were going to look like. And we'll never look as good as we look with Saka. That's just the reality. But we still scored goals after that. And so, yeah, I mean, we dealt with it. And I know that the narrative now if he's out for a significant amount of time is going to be like Arsenal fans, dooming the season. But I just feel like at this stage, like, we can't just do up well, Saka's out, so that means that throw in the towel kind of thing. I really do think that some of these players are going to need to, they're going to need to rise. They're going to need to rise. They're going to need to, lead the line while Saka is not here. And we have a decent run of fixtures for like the next 3-4 fixtures. So hopefully it's not a long-term injury for Saka, but I fully expect the likes of Trossard and Jesus and Martinelli to get us over the line. I fully expect it. I don't think that Saka out should mean we just start losing games from here. Against the better sides, you'll definitely feel it, but against, Ipswich, against teams like that, No offense to them. They're a decent side. We should still be beating them. And so we need to get to the point where, even without Saka or without Saka playing well, which is rare, that we still win the game, because that's a dangerous side. Not a side that cannot do anything without their star player. Victor says, I'm not going to jump on the defense, to be honest. They've been bailing us out time after time. We won't always get clean sheets. And even within that, like, there were still, even though they, like, first of all, there were still some decent moments from the defense despite having drunk moments. I thought they had some decent moments, especially Raya, because he had some game kind of like our goal saving saves, like, if that makes sense, like not like regular saves that he should be making, but like ones that they literally should have scored. And so there were some decent moments in there still. Like, so yeah, I think, yeah, they had some decent moments and weren't their best, but yeah, that happens. Highbury says it's good. Our attack bailed us out for once. Let's see. Keenan says Sarr was solid even at Watford. We should have gone for him. John says, I think we're the first team in English football to score 5 or more goals in a game more than 6 times in a year. And that's one of our things, is like, somebody will look at that and be like, oh, well, Jessica, you said that we had an attacking problem. We do. We do. We score a lot of goals in clusters, but if you could have spread those 5 goals across the Fulham game and the Everton game and today, you would have. We would have just won 2-1, won 1-0, and then won today like 3-0. You would have taken that. So I think that's kind of like our thing, is when we're on, we look like this and we can score against anybody, and we can put the ball in the back of the net. But we have too many games like the Everton game, like the Fulham game, where we really struggle to like get our game off. And so Arteta has to figure out how to get that game kind of going, and again, we have had different 11s every single time. So I don't know if it's just like, it can't really just be individual players, because you would imagine that Havertz, Partey, and Odegaard is not really our best midfield, but we still scored 5 goals, just like we did against Sporting. So what is the common denominator of us, playing better and scoring more goals? Sometimes I just think it's our forwards being clinical early. I think scoring the early goal psychologically helps us a lot, because then we can relax a little bit. Our game plan is very much so built around getting that first goal. And when we don't get that first goal in the first 15, 20 minutes, we drop away and start, I think, second guessing ourselves and not being as confident in the game. This is probably the first time that I've seen us be response FC as well, where we concede after scoring and then score again. And so I feel like it's a psychological thing with Arsenal, where we need to get that early goal and be more clinical early, so that the psychological like thing that we do, where we don't score and then we start getting in our heads about stuff. I feel like it's a lot of it is that. Felix says, now let us support our team until the end of the season. Jesus played well. Martinelli deserves his flowers, and Lewis was fantastic. Charlie says Martinelli is struggling but played better today. Yeah, I mean, his performance was very much so like still in and out. Like, he had some not so great moments and then he had some decent moments. But if he ends up being the person deputizing for Saka, make no bones about it, he has got to, get in some really good performances from us. And I'm just trying to grab onto whatever we possibly can, with Martinelli, because again, just like Jesus a couple of days ago, where, against Nottingham Forest, when we first came back from international break, it wasn't an amazing performance. It didn't have goals in it, but his overall gameplay was a little bit better. Then fast forward to Monaco, he misses the wide open chances, but he gives us an assist. Then fast forward to Crystal Palace in the week, he scores a hat trick. Now the very next game, he's scoring 2 goals, should have probably had 4 goals, and his overall gameplay is even better. So I'm just trying to grab onto anything with Martinelli and just hope that it ends up becoming a little bit of form, because it has to. It has to. We can't go with what we have. We need, or kind of where we're at right now, we need players to start getting into a little bit of form. It's unfortunate Sterling felt something and got injured. So that's one more man down. So it's really Trossard, Martinelli, and Jesus and Havertz, really. So yeah, Highbury Ultra 13 times. Highbury Ultra 13 times says Rice came on and the transition stopped. Just a small observation, which a lot of people were calling for Rice to come on early, because the transitions, we were getting ate up in midfield. Like we were getting ate up. It wasn't like death, but we were getting ate up, and if Raya doesn't make a save here and there, if, they're a little bit better in the final third, we definitely concede at least 3 goals. Like I want to look at the XG because I know that they had some decent chances. That being said, it just is what it is. I feel like when you switch people around and they have different dynamics, you're just more open. With Partey, you're more open, period. And people were talking about how that midfield just doesn't quite work. And I'm like, well, that's the midfield that Rice had to play with for the whole first half of last season. Not only did he keep us within arm's reach of the title race playing in that midfield, but we also weren't conceding goals the way that we are now. And he also scored big goals in the process. So I think a lot of people maybe realize today that midfield with Kai Havertz in the left 8, which he wasn't awful. Like, and that's the thing, he's never quite awful, but it's the positioning that player requires. That player is more of a floater, more of a second striker, and they're a low touch player. And I do think at times Kai was so high that it just left Partey on an island by himself. And if you don't have legs, you're going to suffer. And so I think people got a nice little glimpse of what Rice was dealing with as soon as he signed for Arsenal. He was playing in a midfield that was pretty much like being on an island by yourself. And he had to try to keep everything together while also being our number one signing, while people asking him for goals and stuff like that. So I think people got a little bit of a reality check that when you play with Havertz in midfield, although he's rarely like horrendous, it's just not amazing. Like it's not really, it doesn't have the right connectivity. The spaces are a lot bigger. There's always a lot more space between the lines. He's a low touch player, so he doesn't offer his feet a lot. He's not somebody that's going to take the pressure off of you. And he's not a particularly great tracking back and winning the ball back kind of guy deeper in midfield places. So I'm not surprised that when Rice came on, the transition stopped. But that midfield, I could have told you that because I watched Rice. I wouldn't even call it suffering because he still played well and we still won a lot of games. It just is not the best midfield composition, and no six that we have is going to perform well in a midfield that's basically just you by yourself. Rice is the only one that can kind of do it because he's a more mobile defensive midfielder. So yeah, Keenan says with his passing range, it also feels like MLS takes the pressure off of Odegaard, feeling like he must manage our attacking progression. Kwame says, hi, Jess. It was wonderful that we destroyed Palace and Jesus man of the match. It was wonderful. Charlie says, once Rice and Calafiori came in, we took over control of the game. MLS can be good later. Right now, he is too weak to me, decision making, etc. That's interesting because I don't actually feel like his decision making is one of his best attributes. And I didn't feel like I felt like Rice was actually the trigger for more control. I don't know if I feel like that was Calafiori because to me, MLS was keeping the ball and making the right decisions. So it's interesting that you felt that way. I think Rice gives us more control. Calafiori was a little wild when he first came in, but MLS, yeah, I think he actually makes really good decisions. And I don't think he's weak either. I think, like I said, in the first half, he was one of the only players that was holding his own and not getting beat off the ball. So I think I do disagree with this. I think Rice brings the control, but I hear you. But I would just maintain like the players that are actually playing well. Calafiori is somebody that's been getting consistent injuries. And so the last thing you want to do is rush him back into the 11 just for him to get injured again. MLS is playing well enough now. It's not like, no offense to him, it's not like it's Kivior, so you're like dying to get him out. So I would keep MLS in, if I'm honest, just to make sure that, especially Calafiori and harder games coming up, I'd want like that player to be fit for those games. So yeah. Let's see. Johnny says, what if Jesus falls off again? He can't be worse than Havertz for me. From now on, I have no doubt between those two. He's the better one. Easy. Chosen One says MLS. Oh no, I read that one already. Let's see. There's so many comments. Sorry. I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting some of these. Or says, ironically, that midfield last season suited his game much more than the slower technical buildup. Nico says, we had no control in mid because Havertz was in the mid. Marino would have been ideal. Goyon says, when Nelly, a right footer, plays on the left, he has to cut in and hold. and think like a modern wing forward on the right with his strong foot outside. He has to think less just to push and cross, which might actually suit him. We'll see. Um, Let's see. Goyan also says when Nelly. Oh no, I read that one. I'm sorry. I thought I saw you post something else too. TBG says Martinelli did well. To be fair, halftime hook says Martinelli on the right looks better than Martinelli on the left. I can't lie. Junior says Gabriel Jesus shows your class. He's a brilliant player. He just needs to maintain it. And so I just feel like confidence is a hell of a drug. And I know that there's also and kind of like that feeling also like, well, he, if he does too well, what's going to happen? But I think we just have to stay in the moment because we still have things to take care of this season. There's still things to win, still things on offer. And so I get that there's a lot of thought about the summer window. Even I'm kind of like that because when we're not playing well, it's like, well, fuck it, get to the summer window. But right now, the best thing for us is for Jesus to come in and play well. Being afraid that if he plays too well, then that means we won't get somebody in the summer is something that we just need to look at in the summer. Because right now, we could potentially be looking at time with Saka out, and I'd prefer somebody to have the hot hand, you know? Um, Cuthbert says Nelly on the right is good. He takes on defenders, which is much better to see. And if he keeps that up, taking on defenders, we can be on to something if he takes it to the left. Yeah. Um, DJ says Gabby Jesus made me $600 today going the club tonight. Really? Did he really? Wow, that's crazy. John says Havertz was atrocious bar the goal. Um, Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would say atrocious. I really don't know if I feel like it's atrocious. Um, I think what I I think I don't ever really think he's except for the first couple of times that he played in midfield, like at the beginning of last season, where he was just like, you know, it was hard watch. I don't actually think that he's atrocious. I feel like what it is he just doesn't offer enough of the midfieldy things. He plays like a second striker. He doesn't offer his feed. He doesn't offer very much outside of like a wall pass or a simple pass that gets us across. And so, yeah, I don't know if I feel like it was atrocious. I just think that like, especially with somebody like Partey that literally has like no legs, without Rice there, he really suffers. And even when Rice is there sometimes because Arteta makes his positioning so high, that gap, because when our left center mid is on that first line, all it takes is for them to pass it in between. Because I saw this happen today, is Havertz was there and Martinelli was there, and all it took was for their fullback to slide in behind Martinelli and Havertz for the center back to pass it in between the lines, and they were already beyond them and barreling down on Partey. So Partey is trying to decide whether or not he's going to go or just go back, and so he's indecisive. And so I even see that with Rice. So to me, it's more about the positioning of the left center mid, and I still think that you have to have Rice in there because this is what we look like. We don't have anybody else with true legs, somebody that's truly defensive that can win the ball back, that's energetic. We don't really have that. So Rice kind of needs to be in there. But I kid you not, like if you're somebody that's blaming Havertz because you know that Partey did not perform well today, just remember that Rice played in this exact same midfield for half a season and you guys killed him. It's not always about the player individually, it's about the setup, so and it's even worse with Partey by himself because he cannot be in a midfield that has a lot of space. The space needs to be small and needs to be condensed. When he has to decide whether to step or fall back, you're in trouble. So he wasn't like I don't think Partey performed particularly well in terms of like his defensive duties. I think at most you could probably give him like he was okay, but a lot of that was the setup in midfield is not conducive to somebody with no legs. It's just not. Burmy says Partey definitely struggled today, and Rice looked fantastic as the 8-6. Kwame says, Ken, you're right. Partey was decent. Partey can't stop transition on his own like Rice. Doesn't have the legs for it. It's not a problem when where's Magalhaes and Saliba behind him. Highbury says, exactly, Jess. I don't know why Partey is void of criticism by this fan base. I think everybody has people that criticize them no matter what. So I don't want to say that I think Partey gets no criticism. I just feel like he has a very devout following that feels like he can do no wrong. And we'll try to pretend like today was a great performance or a decent performance or good performance or whatever. It was probably just like, okay, like it really wasn't. It wasn't good. It really wasn't. But I blame the setup more than anything because there's just that midfield. Because I've been saying it when Rice played there, that it's not Rice, it's the setup. When you have Kai Havertz and Odegaard, you're basically playing in there by yourself, because all they have to do is just stay on Odegaard. Havertz doesn't give you any feet. He doesn't help. He doesn't take off any of the load off in terms of build up. It's just you, and once they get past those two, those players are barreling down on you and it's just you. It's like a big, wide open ocean. So I'm not going to be disingenuous and say that, oh, well, the setup was fine for Partey when I don't think it was great for Rice, but I do think it suits Rice better because Rice can actually stop transitions and he's somebody that thrives in defensive situations and can get back, whereas that is just not Partey's bag. So yeah, if that makes sense. TBG says, out of the midfield for me, Partey was the biggest reason for the lack of transition control. It's a common theme. It is a common theme. So yeah, John says MLS should play in the midfield. He's so good. I would love to see him play in midfield. I really would. Mata says, I feel J20 stops a transition even better than Partey. Neither are close to Rice though. Let's see. Dr. Ken says, are you guys watching Barcelona versus Atletico while watching the stream? Oh my gosh, I know I need to change the channel and put that on too. Hold on. Guys, I was such a mess. I'm such in holiday mode now already that I'm such in holiday mode already. I slept on the couch after eating a big box of pizza last night. I'm just on nonsense, I really, really am. So my brain is fully, I really don't want to do any work or anything next week, but football never stops, does it? So yeah, I will be there, but man, I'm I'm just so ragged right now. Okay, whenever this wants to work for me, we'll see. So, but yeah. O'Breezy says, don't know, Jess. This setup suits Odegaard a lot more, gets to play a lot deeper. Not necessarily the Odegaard dropping deep situation. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the left center mid setup. Odegaard dropping deeper does suit us better, especially when you have Kai, because there were times last season where Kai was deeper than Odegaard and Odegaard was playing more like the second striker. And those days never worked because Kai just doesn't have the ability to slot in and receive the ball off of the defenders and do that part of the game. So not necessarily Odegaard's situation didn't really change except for he just was receiving the ball a little bit deeper and allowing Kai to go a little bit higher. But it's basically just once the opposition wins the ball, it's pretty much just a free for all, and I think that's what doesn't suit Partey particularly well. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Not quite sure why this isn't working for me. Simba says, for fuck's sake, Saka is leaving on crutches. Listen, I'm just going to wait for the diagnosis. You know that there's going to be so many in the nose and people trying to get clicks off of the fear mongering around Saka. I would say just wait for the club to give us something instead of, worrying about it, because the reality is that if he did his hammy, he probably will be out. So get your mind locked in on that he probably will, have to be out for a certain amount of time. It's just about how long. But yeah, for the next couple of days, there will be a lot of fear mongering around Saka. There'll be a lot of he's out for this, he's out for that, because there's going to be a lot of people that want to get some money around this time. So just, it was never out of the realm of possibility that our best players would get injured. We had time without Odegaard. It's going to be a revolving door of injuries. So we just have to deal. So, DJ Polar says, worst time, to be honest, so much games in a condensed period. Victor says, people will try to get clicks off of this Saka news. Exactly. Kwame says, we have to cope without Saka. Burmese says, Saka has needed a rest for a while. He's been fantastic, but overplayed. So yeah, Mata says, crutches. Arteta's mind games are out of control. John says MLS plays more forward passes than backward passes, which is great. And it's just a time for the players to step up. I didn't really particularly think we did well without Odegaard. But I think a lot of that was, I feel like a lot of that was more the way that Arteta persisted with something that didn't work. So we've already gotten a first look at what Martinelli looks like on that side. It's okay, it's good. But if we have everything else in place and creating enough chances, we should be able to be okay. But idealistically, you want Saka, you really do. Vig says this should encourage the board to make some signings in January. And it's interesting because Arteta said that only an injury would pretty much make us act in the market if Saka's out for a significant amount of time. I wonder how they're going to backtrack on that, because your best player getting injured is pretty significant, especially if it's for, anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 months or 8 weeks, So, yeah, interesting. Very, very interesting. Nico says, not surprised Saka did his hamstring incompetence from the club not to get an adequate replacement for him for the past 3 years. Johnny says, don't know what the business is with Partey. When the guy has the ball, he pushes it forward as fast as he can. Unlike Donkey, who looks like he runs the passes and reruns. I don't know who Donkey is. House of Kings says, just you alone avoid the party topic when he performs well. You dance around the topic and jump into reading comments when it's time to give him flowers. I mean, I didn't even go in on him today. So, if you're feeling some type of way, it's just probably because you feel like he didn't have a good performance. So you're feeling some type of way about it. But I actually said that the setup was actually more of a problem than him today. So, yeah, he didn't perform particularly well. I think that that's okay. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. John says, was Jesus' first goal a Saka assist? I think so. It's weird because when you score so many, I know this is gonna sound so like arrogant because we don't do it that often. Well, we've done it quite a few times this season already, but you know what I mean? It's like, oh, when you score so many goals, how could you ever keep up with it? So I'm actually gonna pull up the I'm actually gonna pull up the things now, the highlights, so I can remember. Because really, honestly, the only goal that I remember now is is the Rice goal because it was the last one I saw. I kind of remember Martinelli's too. It's so weird how that happens. Like I forget instantly what the goals were like. Um, I forget. But yeah, I'm gonna pull up the highlights and just watch them on the side while I talk to you guys so I can remember what we even did. So funny. I can't wait to rewatch this game because I feel like I missed so much. Because my group chat was going crazy. My group chat was having too much fun. We were cackling. There were so many funny things that happened. Okay, I got them up on the side here so I can see them. Sure, it says dementia settings. Literally dementia settings. Like this is what happens when you're old. You start to, lose your mind. Period. So but yeah, let's see. And here's the thing is Arsenal decided not to get any attackers, because I don't count Sterling. I'm sorry. He just replaced Reece Nelson. He's not somebody that improved us in any way, shape, or form. They basically went out there and did nothing and get that instant karma. Like I always talk about, Arsenal get instant karma for not doing what they're supposed to do. And so the first instant karma was first couple weeks of the season. Odegaard gets injured. Boom. We drop like loads of points in the midst of that. Odegaard comes back. Now Saka's probably injured. So yeah, I mean, this was a club that decided that on the final day that they were going to get Sterling, but if they didn't get Sterling, they were going to do nothing in the attacking department and just go with what they had. Kai Havertz kept them because of what he did at the back end of the season made them feel like they didn't need to go out there and improve the front line. Jesus fire in the belly took all the way until December. Mind you, I'm happy that he's doing it, but it took all the way until December to start really contributing. So yeah, they reap what they sow. I still am very much so in the camp of you made your bed, now lie in it. Period. Chosen One says, I also thought when Rice came on, he was amazing. He was carrying the ball through their midfield over and over. When he's allowed to do that, he really shows what type of player he is. And I just don't think that he's been particularly fit this whole season. I think he's been in and out. The second season scaries where, there's really high expectations on you and you're in and out of the team and you're not able to get any continuity. So hopefully he can come on from now. But I did think he was really good too when he came on. But he was only on for a couple minutes, so I didn't use him for man of the match. So I'm looking at the Saka goal, or no, not the Saka goal, the first goal. I don't know if it touches Gabriel or not, because the cross comes in and Gabriel kind of makes the space for Jesus. I'm not sure. But it could be a Saka assist, because it was still going in that direction, whether or not Gabriel touched it or not. And I don't know, Gabriel's touch was not intentional, I don't think. Yeah, it's just like kind of. I don't know if they'll give it to Saka, but it like hits Gabriel and whoever is marking him a little bit, and then it just squeaks out to Jesus. So yeah, Victor says it's put out as a Gabriel assist, I think. So yeah, I don't think he gets that, but basically Saka did it. Gunnar 217 says, I think we lack a reference point without Saka. It would be interesting to see how we structure our attack. Should he be sidelined for long? I'm praying nothing serious despite the crutches. I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of Trossard in the 9 instead and Jesus out wide, and then because I think they work well together, and then maybe Martinelli on the right. But I know Arteta really trusts Havertz and wants to have him in the team. But I think you have to go with the guys that work together and the combinations. And I really do think, in some ways, Jesus and Havertz work well together as the second striker and the striker. But I think Trossard and Jesus as a pairing up front in terms of like striker and left wing works really good too. So it's going to be interesting to see how Arteta maneuvers things around. But, somebody's just going to have to step up and say, you know what, our season is not going to fall away just because Saka is not here. Saka has basically been carrying the front line for the entire season, and they need to get their shit together. Amina says, just you believe we're less predictable and dangerous when Saka's off the pitch. I'm hearing a lot of agendas. I don't think we're probably less predictable, but are we more dangerous? No, I don't think so. Saka has the most quality in the final third. I feel like, we still left quite a bit on the table by being sloppy and weird up front. He's our best crosser. He's our best creator up there. He's probably our best finisher as well. So no, we're not more dangerous. We're probably a little bit more unpredictable because, obviously, it's not always going to him. But yeah, I feel like it's too early days to be. And again, they did the same thing with Odegaard. First couple of games, we played against a shit Leicester side at home and a shit Southampton team. And because we played halfway decent in one of those games, it was we don't need Odegaard, and only for it to slap them so hard across the face a couple of days later. So if you think that little 30-minute period was any sort of indication of us being better without Saka, be so serious right now. But it does give other players an opportunity to step up, and that's really what we need. So the second goal was second ball from a corner, set piece. So much for people saying that we can't score on set pieces anymore, because that was funny. Johnny says, shit, Southampton played better than Liverpool and should have beaten them a month ago in the league. Yeah, that's not any sort of indication that we're better without Odegaard, though. I think we know, without a shadow of a doubt, we're not. Since he's been back in the team, we haven't lost, even when he's not played particularly well. So we are not better without Odegaard, and we were not better without Saka. You're not ever better without your best players. You're not. So yeah, no. Kwame says, John, that's a good idea for Wanyeri to play on the right. Wanyeri came on and played in the 9, y'all. Arteta said that he could play in the 9, and he stood on business and put him up there. So, I mean, that's an option as well. I mean, I would not mind seeing a Wanyeri, Jesus, Martinelli front three, or I think what we need to make sure that we do in this time period is going into what Amina was saying about like the predictability is make sure that we're as fluid as possible, and that because when we're more fluid and when the players swap positions and you have I feel like more technical players out there, we create more chances. And so when you have Saka, then you can play with Havertz more because then it doesn't feel as like you're losing somebody. But I feel like without Saka, you're going to need an extra pair of feet. You're going to need an extra bit of ingenuity. You're going to need a little bit more creativity because he's pretty much all of your creativity. So those three positions are going to be so important, and they're going to be such high value positions because every single one of those players are going to have to carry their own weight. So you can't have any passengers or anything like that because there's no Saka to overcompensate for somebody doing nothing. Um, so Arteta's going to have to look at that too. You know, maybe you play Wanyeri and Trossard and Jesus. Maybe you play, you know, I don't know, Martinelli out there, but Wanyeri as well. Like he's going to have to figure out a way to make sure that we don't lose all of our creativity because he is our creative beacon up front. So yeah, F says Saka is our most important attacker. End of. He's a massive miss. Thankfully, Jesus has started scoring exactly at the right time. Talk about a lucky break. Um, yeah, for sure. So yeah, we'll see what Arteta does. Like I honestly I think the game was fine. I don't think that, it was like terrible or anything like that. I do think we were open. I do think there were moments where Crystal Palace like definitely had a little bit of the domination in there. That being said, like we were so clinical that it didn't matter, and if we're more clinical often, this will be the result. Obviously, other teams are going to get chances. They're going to have good game plans. So but if you don't attack and you don't score, then you make it so I think it's so much more likely that they score that one goal, or they score two goals, So we were good today. Like there's nothing really to like, nitpick on to, and we won 5-1, you know. So I said my pros and cons, but today was like it was good. It's fine. Um, you know, so yeah. John says that first half could have ended 3-3 and it didn't. And you know what? Like honestly, John, we didn't get the rub of the green at all at the beginning of the season. I think everything that could have went against us did. The red cards, the injuries, everything went against us. And even like when we would have the chances and then the opposition would score on the one half chance that they have, I've seen our rivals have these games all the time where the opposition could have scored 3 or 4 goals, but they didn't. But, Chelsea or Liverpool or Man City end up winning 4-1. And all I can remember is the chances that, those losers didn't score, So I get it, but like we don't want to make this our norm. I know Arteta doesn't want to make this our norm, but good teams should be able to have suspect days at the back and still win, you know? Erwin says, imagine if we had beaten Fulham and Everton. I mean, the thing about that, though, Erwin, is that you could say that, and then because we would have been closer to Liverpool or, closer in the title race or within a point, we may have dropped points today because psychologically we're closer to the title race, or we're right in the mix or, whatever. So I don't always think that if you win the last 2 games, then that automatically means you win this one because the pressure is different. The storyline is different. So I don't think we can always look at it and be, I don't think it's always that straightforward. Like, if somebody is like, oh, well, we score a goal and it's like, oh, well, if we've scored the last 2, we'd be 3-0 up. I mean, if you score them 2 goals, you might not even score that third one because then you take the foot off the gas, So we just have to look at forward, whatever's behind us is whatever's behind us. You know what I mean? I missed that third goal. Okay, this is Martinelli. Oh, yeah. Okay, so Martinelli, good cross. Jesus gets up and then rebound for Kai Havertz. That should have been a hat trick, but I think Havertz right place, right time. Love that. Freaking Palace just running down the gut. Martinelli was so excited. He's always like, I mean, everybody's excited when they score, but nobody's more excited than Martinelli. Gabriel for the 4th goal. Brilliant ball into the channel for Trossard. He passes it across to Jesus. He misses a wide open shot. Then Declan puts it back in, and then it ricochets, and then Martinelli is there for the tap in. And so I think really what you want is Jesus to score that first one. He needs to. He should. But we were right there to get the easy goal, which we don't always get the easy goal. And then I remember the last one, Rice. So, yeah. Um, so, Omashimeli says, please talk about Martinelli. He's not improving at all. Honestly, as much as, I haven't felt like Martinelli has played particularly well this season, I don't know how much longer I can, you know, do the Martinelli is shit conversation. I just think at this stage, because we have so little to work with, we just have to almost look at the positive or bright side, because the likelihood of us getting somebody to upgrade upon him or whatever is very like few and far between. So I'm very much so in the camp of, let's just hope he gets better. How much more is there to say? We need to upgrade on Martinelli, and he's not playing particularly well, but there's nothing else, we really can do. He scored today. I'm hoping that that's, the beginning of a little bit of form from him. But, Martinelli was not bad today. I wouldn't say that it was like an amazing performance, but it was bright, so hopefully he can add on to it. But yeah, I'm very much so like, a little fatigue, of the Martinelli, just because like it's been like a year and a half, you know. Johnny says, yes, Jess, agreed. Everything went against us, especially Martinelli at Bournemouth 1-0. And we don't lose that game, probably win. He finally decided to lose the ugly on curl every goalkeeper anticipates. John says, Kivior would have folded in that first half. The way we were pressing was hella scary. And the way that they were, yeah, it was. Travis says he's still struggling to go past players. He is, but listen, like we've said it, we've said it to death, that he's not on, he's not on. So, we just have to hope that he gets better. And I think also when you win 5-1, it's hard for me to get up for the Martinelli, because I feel like I've been saying it for a long time. And I said in the summer, we needed to upgrade upon him, because that form from last season is not just form. That's now like, that's who he is. Like this, we're well beyond. It's just a bad run of form, right? So yeah, I'm hoping that he starts to do better, because at this stage, it's like, what more can you say? There's 800 of you guys watching on all platforms. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and go ahead and start getting your ratings in. Raya, so Raya, the ball that he passed in for Partey, don't ever do that again in your life. And he had a little, like, the Palace was really pressing on us, and I get that we wanted to play out of the back, but we need to like pump our brakes just a little bit. And in the second half, obviously, we started going long, but that could have been a really bad goal to concede. And there's a lot of goalkeepers conceding those types of goals right now, by the way. And I don't want to become another one. Don't ever do that again. That being said, I do think that, he made some really good saves as well that kept it from being a closer game. So you giveth and you taketh away kind of guy. Like it's kind of like you had drunk moments, but then you had sober moments as well. And so I think our whole back line, except for MLS, had a little bit of the hangover. I don't know what party they went to, if they went to a Christmas party, had a couple of drinks or whatever, but my goodness, it was not cute. So I'm gonna give him like a 6.5. I feel like if he hadn't made those saves, I feel like it would have been like more of a 6, but those saves were important, because in those periods of the game, they score those, and then the whole trajectory and the feeling of the game gets different. Their fans get on top of us, blah, blah, blah. You know how it goes. So 6.5, don't ever do that shit again. And yeah, Timber, I actually thought was mostly good. And it's just a fabulous player that I think puts together a pretty good string of consistency. He has higher highs, like he's had higher highs before, but I think like his mid-range, average range is really good. And I think that that's important because you're not always going to play at 9s and 10s every single game, but I don't want you sliding down to 3s and 4s, which is what we've seen before with other fullbacks, right? And so I think Timber was like less egregious than our center backs were in some ways. When he went forward, he did okay. Like it wasn't anything to write home about, but I do think that Timber is putting together a consistent, kind of like how Ben White used to do, which I think is important. So I'm gonna give him a 7. Good performance, nothing to write home about. Um Saliba. Saliba, I know you don't drink, so I know you weren't drunk. But my goodness, what happened? What happened? Did Mateta rattle you so badly that you just couldn't like rebound? You couldn't recover? Saliba's a fabulous player, but he has these games every once in a while where you're just like, "Ooh, so he is human." Wow. He was giving the ball away back there. He was kind of, I wouldn't say he was getting bullied, but he wasn't winning his duels like he usually does. Mateta was on him, and that was apparent. And so, yeah, I feel like a 6, like, could be worse, truly. But I think Raya and Saliba in particular had like they were really kind of fucking around back there, and so 6 is probably the best I can do, in the circumstances, right? Gabriel should have had a goal. That header was fabulous. So he should have had a goal. He got an assist for the Jesus goal, if you want to count that. Had a really bad header down. He tried to pass it, and it ended up being an opportunity for Crystal Palace. So that wasn't a great moment for him. But the pass in to Trossard for one of our goals, I think it ended up being the Martinelli goal because Trossard passes it to Jesus. Jesus misses it. Then you know the story. That pass was fabulous. And again, there's a narrative that like Gabriel is just like this beast back there that just like can only defend, but he's improved so much on his passing, and that little pass that he's done that quite a few times in the last couple of games, and it's been mustard. So yeah, I think maybe slightly better than Saliba. Had some moments, should have scored a goal. I wish he would have scored that goal. So I'm gonna give him 6.5. Feels harsh for him, but yeah, they were raggedy in that first half. I cannot lie. So like a 6.5, or something like that. Like average-ish, goodish, but nothing like special. I'll stop before we get to MLS because he deserves more. Kwame says, Gabby unlucky he didn't get his trademark set piece goal. G6 is generous for Saliba. If Palace score on this terrible error, he would have been a 4. Let's not be outcome orientated. I don't feel like I am being outcome orientated. I just feel like maybe you think it was worse than what I did. And I also don't actually like counting goals that didn't go in the back of the net because then you have to do it on the other side. Then you have to say, well, what if Jesus scored this? Well, what if Gabriel scored this? Because you could actually give Gabriel a higher score because he hit the bar. So I'm only dealing what actually happened. I don't count goals that didn't happen, but I do think he made individual mistakes that led to decent opportunities for Crystal Palace. So yeah, I think to me, he wasn't like the worst thing I've ever seen. And also they got better throughout the game. But a 6 is probably like just like average. I thought it was like average. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't like the worst thing I've ever seen. Like Victor is saying, like Saliba average, like something around like an average. Um, so yeah. And then now Johnny is saying I'm giving marks like it was 5-4 today. So you can't win. I give Saliba a 6, and people are saying that's too high, and then people are saying it's too low. You can't win. So, that's why you guys have the autonomy to have your own, you have your own ratings that you can do. So yeah. But yeah, I think Gabriel, I gave him like a 6.5. I thought he was fine. They cleaned up towards the end. You are fantastic. Oh my goodness, you are fabulous. You are going up my list of favorites. The close control, the technical ability, the physicality, the ability to carry the ball and pass. I mean, he is one of our I would say that, like, he's not the most talented because he hasn't it's obviously a lot of it is potential, but if he were to reach his potential, he'd be one of the most talented players in the squad because it's very rare that you find somebody that has the eye for a pass like he does, and also the close control and the technical ability and the physicality. That's a very rare thing to have in a player. Um, and we really lack, this is going to sound harsh, but we lack special talent in midfield in some ways. Like sometimes you need somebody that can unlock things or do something that other players just cannot do. We saw it earlier with like Morgan Rogers. He may not be the best. He's not, Tielemans is like elite kind of guy passing from the base of midfield. Morgan Rogers is not going to be able to do that, but he has an elite quality for carrying the ball, and he's so strong, and he's starting to make better decisions in the final third. Like he's night and day from the player that played against us in the beginning of the season. Like that player couldn't pass the ball and made the wrong decision almost every single time. Today, he made the right decision almost every single time. And so it's just, and that's like a midfield quality, like an elite quality that you need in your midfield. And I feel like and some of our players, they lack some of that. Like Odegaard has some elite qualities. Declan Rice has some elite qualities. Partey has some elite qualities. MLS also has some elite qualities where they're just the best at doing that. They could, it's like they have that, like, and you can't take that away from them. And MLS has three of them that if he, matures in those three categories with his physicality, technical level, and passing, whoo, you're not going to be able to keep him at left back. I'll tell you that for sure. That is a left center mid if I ever seen one. That is a left center mid if I ever see one. And one of the things that we used to talk about with Xhaka, that he could pick a pass, if the positioning was right, he could do this, do that. But he never had the ability to like carry the ball really. And he wasn't like athletic. He's athletic and can carry the ball. Yeah, I'm not saying that he's that player yet. Again, what I'm saying is that if he fulfills the potential that he has in those three categories of the talent that he possesses, he's going to be something else, y'all. He's going to be something else. This is a player to get excited about. As long as we keep him fit, my goodness, he's going to be playing in midfield sooner rather than later. I'm going to give him higher than that. I think he was fabulous. Like, I'm going to give him an 8. I thought, this was a performance to write home about. I think in the first half where people were not composed, where, they were getting bopped, where they were getting bullied, where they weren't making the right decision on the ball, he was. And this is an 18-year-old. I love the performance. He deserves an 8. Like, he's great. Like, I like him. Victor says 8 MLS. Boy says, you man are glazing this boy a lot when he got very lucky at multiple moments this match. Listen, if we say that he was shit, then you'll be turn around saying, well, how could you say that? He's fantastic. Now you're saying, well, he could have I'm just going by what I saw. I thought he was great. Johnny says, well, I'm not taking out Calafiori when he's 100%. So put MLS in for Havertz in the midfield. Oh, God, please do enlighten Arteta's mind. As it says, didn't Saka start left back when he broke into the team? Yes, he did. Kwame says, Timber and Lewis Skelly are our best fullbacks. John says, sometimes I confuse him with Timber. Victor says, MLS, Hill, and Timber. Johnny D says, Tielemans is literally the guy we refused to take for free in the summer. Burmy says, MLS 8. MD says, MLS is the best surprise of the season. He could become a mirror image of Timber on the left, but I think he has a better passing range. I'm telling you, I really think he has a pass on him that Timber doesn't have. But I hear what you're saying. Like, they have some similarities, especially with the ball control and stuff like that. He was really good. Esteban says, so composed. MLS 8 out of 10. Johnny D says, yes, MLS deserves a title at his first Arsenal season, 8 out of 10. So yeah, I think he's really, really good. And he was one of my standout performers today. And I think he deserved like all of the plaudits that he got. Partey, again, I don't think that this was his best performance, but I also don't like that setup. I just don't feel like it's enough midfield. And when you don't have somebody that has legs, it's even worse. And he was getting ate up in that first half. And it wasn't necessarily because like his positioning was like terrible or anything like that. It was just more like there just wasn't anybody else in the midfield. Once they got past Odegaard and Havertz, which was very easy for them to just pass through the lines, you can imagine it's just Partey there, and either he commits and then commits a foul, or they just go by him or whatever. And so, yeah, I want to be fair and not disingenuous, because I hated that setup when Rice was in there. And I talked about it a lot, that it's just not a good midfield. And Rice was making it work because he's just a very good defensive player, and he has the legs and the ball winning and all that kind of stuff. I thought Partey struggled today. Jorginho would have struggled as well. So I'm going to give him a 6. I think he actually oddly got better when he got to right back, which is so strange, but I also thought we had more control over the game at that point, and so it became easier for him. But I think it was like a rough day, for the midfield in certain ways. So yeah, 6 for him. I think Odegaard was also a little bit like on the quieter side. He did some good things, some not so great things. I thought he got frustrated because the Crystal Palace players were being really physical with him, and he wasn't getting the fouls that he felt like he should be getting. And there were still moments where he didn't take a shot. So as much as like Odegaard needs to get out of this idea that he needs to walk the ball into the back of the net, take a pop, and when you do it, get it on target. Stop trying to do a pirouette in the middle of the box. I don't know why you're doing that. So it was like an average Odegaard performance where, some players could never even put in a performance like that, but because it's Odegaard and we have such high expectations, I felt like I wanted more. And so, yeah, I feel like a 6.5, 6, something like that. Like I said, beyond like Jesus and MLS, I kind of thought everybody was kind of on the same vibe. And then like Rice was also really good when he came on. But yeah, I thought everybody else was kind of on like this, vibe. We just happened to be incredibly clinical on the day. So 6.5 for you. Off you pop. And then Havertz. So, like I already said, I do think that anytime he plays in midfield, he is scapegoated a little bit. He just doesn't have the midfield. He just doesn't have it. And then the way that it's meant to be played under Mikel Arteta, it's not even a midfield position. It's somebody that they do get up and back, and they are kind of box to box, but really wall passes, very simple passes, swept out to the left wing. A lot of crashing the box, a lot of off the ball work, but definitely not somebody that's going to, one, help Thomas Partey in the pivot or help him on transition, and two, not gonna help him build up, not gonna be an extra pair of feet, not gonna make something out of nothing, not somebody that's gonna create on their own. I thought at a certain point, especially when we went longer in the second half, he was eating up some of those second balls, and that helped him with his performance. But I don't want to go too far in either direction. I don't think it was catastrophic, and equally, I don't think it was anything to write home about either. So and he scored, um, but it was like one of those types of goals where, you know, it really wasn't like anything, if that makes sense. Like it wasn't anything like beyond a tap in, like he was in the right spot at the right time. So I'm gonna give him a 6.5 as well. I need our left center mid to be so much more than what it is, but Arteta's obsessed with the left back being the left center mid and the left center mid being a second striker. And although I do think MLS stands on his own and makes that work and, does his thing, it just still feels like there's just not enough going on in there. And I just don't know how you guys feel about it, but that setup does not work for Jessica. So yeah, I'm always going to be like, so 6.5 for him. It's just not, it's not it for me, so maybe it's just like it's a personal preference. Boy says, no one else was in the right spot to tap it in. Yeah, no, I totally understand that. Like, I'm not going to take anything away from him, but it's just like when people are like, well, Trossard scored a goal, but the rest of his performance was like whatever. You can't do something different, with Kai Havertz just because you like him. The rest of the performance without the goal is the same. It's the same, So, yeah, he gets a little bit of credit for being there at the right time, but let's not pretend like the rest of the performance was anything to write home about. I gave him a 6.5, which is basically like just a little bit better than average, which is what I thought the performance was. Um, So yeah, Johnny says, I don't mind with the left center mid being a midfielder and for whatever being whatever, as long as none of them are Havertz. So yeah, and so I don't know why people are interpreting a 6.5 as like catastrophic or anything like that. But I'm just not going. I just don't think it was a special performance or anything to write home about. And once you get into 7s and 8s, we're talking about the better performers in the team. And I don't think outside of the goal, which was basically a tap in, there was anything about that performance that was anything other than just a little bit above average, So that's what a 6.5 is. Don't really understand what the problem is. F says Kai 6.5 did okay today. Defo playing midfield better than last season, but it's not good enough, really, if we're honest. He had a good game today, though, in my opinion. Exactly. I feel like that's all it, really is. And like I said, it's not so much about Havertz not being like he didn't play badly. Like that's what I'm saying. And I still feel like people, because they love him so much and they can't like remove their emotional attachment to him. So anytime they hear something that's not he was amazing, they hear he was shit. But I don't like the setup. I don't like the setup. So like I didn't necessarily blame Partey. I'm not necessarily blaming Havertz either. It just doesn't work. It doesn't even work when it's Rice. That second striker, it just leaves such a massive gap in midfield. And I just prefer my midfielders to do midfieldy shit. So I just feel like he's almost like winning second balls, kind of, ghosting into the box, doing that kind of stuff is fine. But you're lying if you're saying that that was a special midfield performance or anything other than okay or decent or good. It's just not, it's not deep. Like it's really, really not. Like nobody's saying he was like the worst player on the planet. So yeah. Victor says Odegaard 6.5. It was, yeah, I feel like he could do so much better than he did today. It was like a whatever performance really from him as well. The midfield was not amazing, but we were clinical, and that's the point. So Martinelli is probably another one that, without the goal, the performance is pretty okay. It's decent, it's solid, so probably a 6.5, 7, maybe if you're being kind. Um, the goal was kind of like a tap-any type of goal, so if you're giving Kai Havertz points because he tapped in the ball, then you're also giving Martinelli points because he tapped in the ball. I think the performance was just kind of like, it was just kind of, but he was bright, and I thought he did okay on the right-hand side. It was just, yeah, it was good, solid, okay, decent, 6.5. Saka, before he went off, I thought, you know, decent like Saka situation. I thought he probably would have had a decent little battle with Mitchell. I think I don't want to say he struggles with those types, but I think if they're kind of like athletic and strong, kind of like he can't use that as his superpower, it takes him a little bit longer to like get the best of them. But usually he does at a certain point. So yeah, I thought, he was doing okay before he came off. I'm hoping that he's okay. But I'm gonna give him a 7. I thought he was like solid, good, whatever, usual Saka. And Trossard also came on, and I actually think Trossard did a good job. Besides that one whack volley that he did, I thought he was good. He passed that ball across to Jesus, and Jesus should have put it in the back of the net. He should have had an assist, but I'm gonna give him a 7. I thought he was solid, good, decent. And then probably man of the match, who I think even outside the goals, the just general performance, him holding up the ball, winning the ball back, flicking the ball around the corner to Havertz or Odegaard. His whole confidence is a hell of a drug. That's all I'm gonna say. He definitely man of the match to me. Should have had like 4 or 5 goals. Really, he was fabulous. And I'm just hoping that he keeps it up because we're gonna need it. 9, my man of the match, and very deserving. Can he play Crystal Palace every week? My goodness, he hates them or loves them, so who knows? But yeah, Michael says Trossard has the height of a 9-year-old and also the strength. Boy says 9 for Jesus. F says Martinelli 7.5. Thought he was threatening and made good balls, especially on the right. Needs to step up now that Saka's out. Kwame says Trossard 7. Kwame says Saka 6. I'm afraid. Fair enough. Didn't do much, so yeah. Esteban says, Jess, would you like to see Jesus down the left and Havertz at the 9, or do you think it's time for Kai to come off of the bench for a bit? Well, I mean, I'm not I'm not going to keep Rice on the bench to accommodate Havertz at left center mid. So I think, Saka getting injured is potentially a good thing for Mikel because then he doesn't have to make a hard decision. I think he does like Havertz a lot, so he struggles to bench him and he tries to find ways to use him because he likes him so much. And a lot of the stuff that Havertz does well doesn't show up in stats, like the duels and the space and all that kind of stuff. So I know that's why I try to like him. It's not all about stats all the time. But I think this injury to Saka maybe does come at a decent time for Havertz when Jesus is playing well, and there's no way that Declan Rice is going to stay on the bench, and Arteta also wants to use Partey at the 6. So, he's getting his left backs back, which means that Timber can also stay on the right, and he's our only right back. So things are kind of shaping up where probably for the next couple of games I could see, are the Rice, Partey, Odegaard midfield, and then so that leaves Trossard, Jesus, Havertz, and Martinelli. And so one of them isn't gonna make it. And so I feel like it's gonna be Trossard. I feel like Trossard will be the odd man out. I feel like Jesus will go to the left and Havertz will go through the center and Martinelli will play on the right. But I just feel like, Jesus should maintain the 9 position. I just feel like shunting him out wide is taking away from him getting the glory at 9 because it's very different. When you're the number 9 and you're playing on the wing, you're being moved there because there's somebody else better to play in that position. I feel like with such a fragile player that's so fragile in terms of his confidence, you want to leave him there. But I know Arteta. I know Arteta. I know him. Like, we knew that he was going to do left center mid, Kai, and Jesus at the striker. So I feel like the most likely situation is that Jesus will move to the wing now that Saka is injured. So yeah. Kwame says GJ10. But yeah, you know. Johnny says Jesus 9 out of 10 could have been a 10, but that second half miss was horrible. Why didn't he shoot it strongly like the first 2 goals? He got relaxed. I don't want to see that again. Yeah, he needs to stay on it for sure. Jesus should have scored another hat trick, 9 out of 10. Yeah, you don't want to see him starting to miss those chances again, but the more chances that he gets, the more likely he is to score. So we just have to maintain a certain level that allows us to create chances, and that means that, we have to maintain whatever, like, basically like the last couple of games that we played, or the last 45 minutes against Crystal Palace and then all of the 90 minutes today, that level of aggression and, whatever, that's what we should do. Crystal Palace also weren't sitting back, so that's also something to think about, is that most teams at home against us will sit in, especially if they're not great teams. But when we go away from home and they feel like they need to attack, we get more space like we did today. So we'll see how other teams react. I do think that away from home is a good opportunity to exploit teams, where at home, teams just try to not play. So yeah, but I like what's going on with Jesus. We need it to continue. The pressure is on now if Saka's out, so we need you to do your thing. And hopefully he continues. Arteta coached the game well. The subs came in at the right time. He managed the game good. Like, he moved Martinelli to the right and that worked out for us. So no, nothing to say about Mikel. I think he was just fine. So, and he did a good job. So yeah, but overall it's a good game, and there's obviously, because it wasn't perfect and we all know that the performance wasn't perfect, there were still things to talk about, and there's still things for the team to, fix. But we've also closed the gap and put a little bit more pressure on Chelsea and Liverpool to continue to perform. And we also are not going to end the weekend below Nottingham Forest, because I was like not feeling that shit, so but Liverpool have 2 games in hand, which is a little fucking annoying because, Man City also started to get games in hand just around this time as well. And you always have to try to predict, what are they going to do with the games in hand? What are they going to do with games in hand? So they could actually be like 9 points ahead of us, so just want to keep that in mind. But we never really know. So Liverpool play against what? Spurs, and Chelsea play against some other bullshit team that's going to lay down Leverton. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I really enjoyed this match reaction. We always have so much fun, agreeing, disagreeing, whatever you want to call it. Make sure you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. I may or may not come on tomorrow. It just depends. You guys, I'm fucking lazy, and it's the holidays, and I just want to lay down on my couch and eat food. So I may or may not be back. Please don't hurt me. Like, I love you guys down, but my goodness, what happened to being a kid and having Christmas, the Christmas time off? Whatever happened to that? But make sure you guys, like I said, like and subscribe. In the comment section, if you want to tell me I'm wrong, please do so. I would love that. And I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.